time and everybody else who has come on time. Cassie, is there, you okay with us moving forward?
Yeah, we have a good group from the adolescent brigade.
Okay.
Hi, Cassie.
So welcome, everyone. I just wanted to ask you to please make sure you put your first and last name in the chat if you have not already done so, just so we can have an accurate record of attendance. I also want to let you know that today's session is being recorded. If you have a particular issue, please let us know. And I'm going to just gratefully hand it over to Maureen Mulhern, who is going to share with you some strategies behind a resume.
Thank you very much. So hello, everybody. I'm Maureen Mulhern. I'm the Director of Career Development, and my colleague is also on the phone or the meeting, Shannon Hargrove. She's the Director of Experiential Learning. So we're happy to chat with you today. I'm going to be talking about resumes, and we'll discuss at the end a few opportunities that are available for you. I know we have a lot of the seniors, I think, right? Mainly these are seniors on the call. Okay. So we will be talking about strategy in a resume because I know hopefully most of you and probably all of you have your resume done, but there's definitely a way to strategically set it up to catch the interest of an employer. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But to begin, normally if I was in front of you, I'd be asking you to raise your hand. I think I'm happy to say enough of you on here that I won't make you do that. But I do want to start with this visual. So imagine this is a school administrator who has posted a couple positions that they're going to be hiring for. And these are all the resumes and cover letters that they received, and how overwhelming that's got to feel for that recruiter to have to get through all those resumes and cover letters. So, for one position, there could be hundreds of resumes. So I want you to keep that in mind as I'm talking with you about some of the strategies for your resume, one of which is keep it simple in some respects. You want to be concise. So I've seen lots of students who have come in for a meeting with me to go over their resume, and the resume may be 2-3 pages long. Although 2 pages is acceptable, at this stage in the game, I rarely find a student that I can't help get their resume down to 1 page. And hopefully as I go through some of the tips here, it'll make sense. But these recruiters will spend on average 3 to 6 seconds skimming a resume. So you want to make sure that you're catching their attention, that something on your resume stands out, that they can easily navigate it and find what they need to find. Because some recruiters have said to me that if they find that a resume is kind of just very wordy and too many pages, a lot of times they will just throw that in the garbage because they have a whole pile of resumes to get through. So although we're all unique, a lot of your skills and background are going to overlap with the people you're competing with for opportunities. So these recruiters need to find ways to bring that pile down. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can be sure that your resume will hopefully be considered and looked at. So just to kind of go through some tips, I already talked about being concise and to the point. Sometimes students put so many words on their page that things get lost in the sauce. So you want to eliminate excess words. You don't want to use personal pronouns when you're talking about the things you've done in your jobs. You can eliminate excess words like and the. And again, we'll be talking about, I'll be going through some samples and hopefully that'll help make sense. I think most of you received my education resume packet. If there's anybody here that has not received it, you can certainly email me and I'd be happy to send that to you. So you can kind of see what I'm going to talk about. So the next bullet here, be consistent. You do want to be careful with your format and you do want to keep it consistent. So I've seen resumes from students where they start, maybe their education section is in Times New Roman, and then some of their bullets are in Arial. You want to keep your font the same throughout the resume. So pick one, a simple font. You don't want to be picking the fun fonts because you think it'll be, like Comic Sans. Oh, that'd be fun to kind of use that. You want to stick to basics like the Arial and the Times New Roman. And when you format, you want to make sure that things align. So if you're going to have bullets for different sections, you want to make sure that when you look at that page overall, everything's kind of lining up throughout the resume. So consistency is important. The other thing that you want to be sure to do is in each section of your resume, you want to have the information in what's called reverse chronological order. And so what that means is most recent first. So think, what have I done lately? And that's going to be at the top. So if you are currently in a job, that job should be the first thing listed in your experience section, for example. If you are a transfer student, STAC is where you're at now. So STAC would be listed first in that education section, and then you would list the school that you transferred out of. And if there are any students who are transfer students, which I know STAC has a lot of them, you can certainly reach out to me. I'm happy to provide sample transfer resumes so you can see how to set that up, or we can just talk about it. Okay. Grammatical and spelling errors. As silly as it may seem, I can't tell you how many recruiters have said if they see a grammar or spelling error on a resume, they will toss that resume. And does anybody, you can unmute if you want to jump in here. Does anybody want to take a guess why that is the case?
They feel like you didn't take your time proofreading your resume before giving it to them.
Thank you, Frankie. Yes, so exactly. And this is supposed to be the most perfect piece of paper representing you. So if you're not taking the time to make sure that there are no grammar and spelling errors, what is that going to tell them about the work that you're going to turn out in your job? As teachers, as education professionals, you might be corresponding with parents. And if you're sending out an email with grammar and spelling errors, it's a poor reflection on that school and the people that they're hiring. So you want to make sure that you are checking your grammar and your spelling. There are programs out there like Grammarly, which I haven't personally used, but I've heard great things from people about that will check your grammar. And there's also, we all know, spell check on, Word or Google. I would always recommend run a spell check, but don't stop there because, for example, the word there is spelled 3 ways, or I have made spelling errors and it has formed a new word. It's not the word I intended to use, but the spell check is not going to pick that up. So you want to make sure that after you run the spell check, my recommendation is have somebody else take a look at it, whether it's a friend or I'm here and Shannon Hargrove, we're both here. We can look at your resume. The more sets of eyes that look at that resume, the more likely that someone is going to pick those things up. Okay, so you also want to include things like certifications. So as education majors, you guys are going to be getting several certifications. There are going to be things like the child abuse seminar and other things that are important for you to get before you go into this field, and required. So if you have completed some of those, you can include that under a certification section, or you could call it professional development. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can brand the sections. It's not a one size fits all, and there's room for creativity. If in doubt, reach out to either myself or a faculty member, and we can give you our opinion on how you have things set up. You do also want to think about including activities. So if you're on a team at STAC or you belong to a club, these are things that are great to include in an activity section. Further, if you are going for a position where there are clubs that align with some of the clubs that you've done here at the college, it may catch somebody's eye. So you do want to think about that. Make sure you're not leaving anything off that you've been involved in. Now, as seniors, you're probably not going to have your activities from your high school on there. However, I would never tell you if you, let's say you did something in your high school and maybe you were on the drama club and you're applying to a high school and you know that they have the drama club, maybe either work that into your cover letter, which I'll talk about, or if you have room on your resume, I might say include that if that's something that you're really passionate about and you think it would be fun to get involved at the high school, because it could catch their eye. It could be something that sets you apart from the pack. Maybe they need some help on the side or after school. So you want to think about things that will add value for the reader of that resume. Okay, so honors, awards, achievements. If you received an academic or an athletic scholarship to STAC, you want to include that. If you've made Dean's List, or maybe you have an achievement here at the college, something that you participated in that you're particularly proud of, you could create an honors/achievement section for that. So again, everybody is different and unique and brings different things to the table. So not everybody's going to have that section, but definitely you want to think about it if you have several honors and awards. And then volunteer work. You definitely want to include if you've been involved in any volunteer work. It's great, especially if you find that the school you are applying to has been involved in different community service. And that, I guess, as a side note, is something you're going to hear me say a couple of times probably today. Before you apply to a school district or a school, you should research that school, go onto their website and see if there's anything interesting that catches your eye. It's going to make your cover letter a little bit more robust and possibly catch the attention of that reader. And it also is good to just have that kind of knowledge when you go into an interview. And so again, if you're researching the school website and you see that they have been involved in some kind of project, a lot of times the schools will put pictures on the website of things that the kids were involved in. You might see a tie there, and that may be something that catches their eye. So definitely keep that in mind. Now, volunteer work, aside from maybe aligning with the school and their values, what else do you think volunteer work might say to someone looking at your resume?
I think if you add volunteer work that you've done, it says that, oh, they enjoy going out of their way to, help people or get involved with the community. And it says that they're a people person too. So I think that's valuable.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Molly. So that is true. It says something about your character, and you make a good point. Like it says that you're good with people. I mean, you guys are going into a service field and working with people, both the students that you're going to be teaching and the people that you work with and the parents. There's going to be a lot of communication and interpersonal skills that are going to be needed in your position. So yeah, good point. Okay, and then finally, I have down here work experience. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we look at the resume. So as education majors, there are some sections that are going to be more unique to you than any of the other majors here at the college. So student teaching, as seniors, you are either currently involved or maybe have done some student teaching already. So that is a section that you're going to want to include on your resume, as well as the field work and observations. Professional development, I mentioned earlier with your certifications, just different ways that you can brand those sections. So now I'm going to just pull up a sample resume. If you would like a copy of this, just send me an email and I can send that out to you. But again, I think you guys have that resume packet. It has a variety of different resumes. And one thing to note is it's not one size fits all. There is room for creativity. So what I show you here, if there's something missing that you feel like I should create this particular section, talk with me or the faculty. We can all give you helpful tips on what might be the best way to put that on the resume. So at the top of your resume, obviously you're going to have your name. You don't want to go over 14-point type size as a general rule of thumb with your name. I've seen students do real large at the top. I know there's a lot of funky resume samples out there if you Google, but you don't want to waste a lot of space on your name when you're putting this resume together. And you're going to see how the page really fills up pretty quickly after you've done your observation, your student teaching, and some other things. Underneath your name, obviously, is your address, your contact information. What I recommend, I've seen students put a home phone, a personal cell phone. I've seen students include 2 emails, their STAC email, and then their personal. Pick whichever one you check most frequently. If a recruiter calls that phone number and they don't get you and they leave a message on your home machine and you don't check it, then you might miss the boat on that opportunity. So pick the phone number that you are going to be answering. And just a note, because I have a daughter in college right now, so I don't know if any of you are like this, but she generally, when she doesn't recognize a phone number, she doesn't pick up. So my advice to her, and same advice to you, if you are in the application process, I would just pick up all calls unless you're in the middle of something and you know you're not going to be able to talk. Because you don't want to miss out, and make sure that this is another thing with her, that your voicemail is clear, because if they try you a few times and they can't leave you a voicemail, they will probably move on. Remember that picture I showed you at the beginning, there are several applications for one position. So you don't want a silly thing like you not being, or them not being able to get a hold of you to be the reason that you miss out. So, same with your email. Make sure it's an email that you're checking. You don't want to put a funky email up there. I recommend just use your STAC email because it's very professional, just first, last name. But you can use a personal email as long as it's not like a wacky email address. All right, so moving along. First thing I would recommend, and I've seen students put the education at the bottom, but if you're working with a parent, a lot of parents might be recommending putting the education at the bottom. That's because seasoned professionals do set their resume up that way. But as a current student, you should have your education at the top. The employer needs to know, what's your status? Can I hire you for an entry-level position, or are you still in school? So as an example, you're going to put your St. Thomas Aquinas College, as I mentioned, first. Include the Spark Hill, New York. Many students put this NCAT accredited, and that's an important accreditation that our school has. If you're applying to the local schools here, most of them know that we have NCAT accreditation, but you can include that if you'd like. And then on the next line, you want to have the name of the degree that you're going to be receiving. So Bachelor of Science in Childhood Ed, in this case, this person has a concentration in history. And they also are an honors student. So they included some of that information here under the education section. On the right-hand side, you'll see they also included the month and year that they'll be graduating. You want to make sure, or I guess I would recommend to you, I've seen students who put anticipated graduation date and then they put the month and year. That is a waste of space. Those are more words on the page than are needed. Whatever month and year you put on there, they're going to assume that's your anticipated graduation date. So that's a great example of where you can cut words. And then you do want to include your GPA if it's a 3.0 or higher as a general rule of thumb. If it's a little bit under that, it's your judgment call. The downside of leaving your GPA off is that they may assume it's super low and that's why you left it off. So you want to think about that. Again, 3.0 or higher, it should definitely be on there. And then this student actually went to the Oxford University program in the summer. The honor students typically will do that. If you are one of those students, this is just an example of a way you can set it up if you want to include that on your resume and just let them know when. So this particular person was in the summer. Okay. As I'm going along, if any of you have questions, please just jump in and interrupt me. So the next section here, we have the certifications that this student received or is going to receive. You'll notice that she has the word pending in parentheses because she hasn't yet received it. Once you do receive the or earn the certification, you want to have the month and year that you earn it. And then following that, they had specific educational awards they received, Dean's List. If you're going to put Dean's List down, include the semesters that you made Dean's List. Some students make Dean's List every semester, so they can simply state all semesters over on the right instead of getting into all the different dates. If your dates are in a row, you can easily just set them up as fall, whatever, to present. And then she listed some of her honor societies that she's in and that she placed top 15% in Praxis too. So if there's something that you're particularly proud of, such as that's unique, definitely consider including that. This might be something that makes her stand out. And then, I'm sorry. So student teaching would be the next section. Now, the way this student set it up, you see the name of the school, city, state, and then the grades that she was involved with, and then it was an inclusive classroom. She also included the month and year to the month and year that she was doing this student teaching. It's important. I often see student resumes where they just put the year. They don't include the months, but starting in January is very different than starting in October or November. So you want to make sure you're letting them know so they get a good understanding of when exactly you were student teaching or in a job, which we'll talk about in a minute. Here they shared bullets describing exactly what they were involved in while they were in that role, student teaching. And they started off with action verbs. So received training in balanced literacy, differentiated, a great word in education, differentiated instruction for all learners, etc. So you guys can read over these. And she also brought in that she used smartboard technology, which is a great way to embed some of the technology that you're using in the classroom into your resume. Keep in mind, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, if you did get involved during the pandemic in some remote teaching, that might be something you want to point out as well as you're building this resume out. Okay.
I just have a quick question about the student teaching
Sure.
section. This person, I think it was at one school. If you're at more than one school, should you keep it into one section or two different ones?
Great question. So if you had multiple student teaching experiences, that student teaching section header is introducing the idea that you're going to be listing out all your student teaching experiences. So it's same thing with that chronological order. So if this person just finished at Lincoln School, but the semester before was at another school, Lincoln would come first and then the other school. Now, I talked at the beginning about consistency and format. So you would want to make sure you're setting up that second position that you were involved in the same format. So italicize the name of the school and the city, state, etc. Include the months and years that you were involved in that, and then give some nice bullets describing your responsibilities or things that you learned in that role. Does that make sense, Molly?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Great question. Okay, so underneath the student teaching, they have, this girl has the field experience. So she stated the hours that she did her observations and what grades. And again, month, year to month, year, and that's always usually over at the right-hand side. You'll notice I'm going to show you a snapshot of this whole resume at the end, but all the dates are aligning at the right-hand side. All right, and then work experience. So this is where you can list any jobs you've had, whether they relate to the field of education or not. I guess one thing I'll point out with this particular resume is there are some interesting bullets that she has here that kind of tie into the field of education. She had conducted educational programs. researched and prepared articles. I mean, I'm sure teaching involves some research. So, in this case, this is a nice thing for her to include, but whether it aligns with the field of teaching or not, it should be included. I was actually just speaking with another education class prior to this, and that was a concern. The student was thinking that they shouldn't include things if they don't relate. Now, reality is a lot of the students here have done things like babysitting or camp counselor. Those are great experiences because you're working potentially with the population that you might be looking to teach. So you can leverage those opportunities in an interview, on your resume, in a cover letter. But if you were, for example, a lifeguard or a waitress, those are still good experiences to include. And I'll talk a little bit about a good way you can set it up to differentiate the things that relate to the field that you want to make sure a recruiter doesn't miss when they read your resume. But you can still have those additional experiences on there. So I'll talk about that in a couple more minutes. But again, you're giving the name of the organization that you worked at and the position title, and then some nice bullets describing your responsibilities and or accomplishments at those positions. And then this person included their professional development seminars, which were what I had mentioned earlier, like the child abuse seminar, school violence. As you get certified in those areas or complete those professional development programs, you can add those to your resume. And I don't know if on your view, it's blocked by the attendees on the right, but there are dates over here to the right as to when you receive those certifications or completed the professional development program. And finally, we have, somebody has their hand raised. Go ahead, Pat.
I work as a bartender on the weekends, and I know it's sometimes it can be frowned upon. Should I leave that on a resume or no?
Yes, because you're working. So what they'll take out of that is not what you're actually doing on the job. But they're going to see that you're working. So if you're working while you're juggling school, there's something to be said about that. I can understand your concern, but I mean, I don't know if Francesca or Cassie, you have an opinion on this, but in general, I always recommend that students include it because it's saying something about your work ethic. It's saying something about your time management skills, especially if your GPA is in good standing. The fact that you can manage going to school full time and also holding down a job, there's something to be said about that. And sometimes at night, that's like the best job to get for you, and we all have our reasons for different jobs, and maybe it just pays really well, and so that's your business. But what they're going to take from it, not only is that you're working, you're also building transferable skills. So transferable skills are like communication, interpersonal, time management, teamwork, leadership, problem solving, organizational skills. So I don't know if I repeated myself, so I apologize if I said one of them twice, but those skills are transferable to a lot of different jobs. And what I would see for a bartender is that you're building communication skills, interpersonal skills, probably the time management. But I don't know, Cassie, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that's a really great point. And also, Pat, I know you've been doing it for a while, so I think also showing like a significant amount of time at a job can be really beneficial too.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Okay, cool. I just wasn't sure. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have
Good
a question.
Yeah.
Do they look at dates? More specifically, if because I'm student teaching right now, but I also got offered a position to start up in. So I'm the literacy aide for the school while student teaching. I got special permission and everything like that. Does that will they be confused if they're oh, she's student teaching during this time, but she says she's working during this time?
I think what they're going to see is not only that you have more experience beyond just student teaching, I think they're also going to see that you're managing your time very well.
Okay. So
yeah.
I don't have to make any like special notes or like, cause I don't want them to be like, oh, like I don't want to confuse them because that's not really how it normally goes. So.
Right. Well, student teaching will be in its own section, student teaching, and it sounds like the other one's like a part-time job. Is that correct?
Yeah.
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 So that would go under the work experience. So it's
Okay.
going to essentially be listing it like two different opportunities because it sounds like you're doing two different jobs.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And that's impressive, Emma, because you are, like I said, juggling being a full-time student, also student teaching. Well, I guess when you're a full-time student, you're student teaching at this point, but you're student teaching and you're also managing a job on the side. So again, goes back to your clear your time. Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good question. Is anybody else? I can pause for a moment. If anybody else has a question, or maybe you have a job that you're not quite sure how to put it down on paper.
I have a question.
Sure.
So I am a change of careers student. I was working in finance for 4 or 5 years. So that right now is the bulk of my resume outside of student teaching. And then prior to student teaching, I was working as a teaching assistant in an elementary school. So I was just wondering how much of prior experience that is unrelated to education and teaching should I focus on when updating my resume?
How long ago did you change careers? Like,
I stopped working at my old job October of 2020.
okay. So, yeah, I mean, I would say, well, you and I should probably talk further about this because probably more I would want to look at your background as a whole, but you can certainly include that. And that actually is a great example of a resume I'm going to show you in a moment, where you can really showcase experience that's related to your field and then have a small section at the bottom of additional experience where you maybe decide not to get into a lot of bullets, maybe no bullets at all, but you're stating what the position was, how long you were in it, and what the organization name was. It's on there. So in an interview, they could ask you, you know, can you talk to us a little bit about this position if they want to know about it? It could be that they see that you did it, they understand you're making a career change, and it, you know, it may or may not align with what you're looking to do. For example, you know, if you're going to teach in high school and you were an engineer who has now come back and decided to teach and you're going for physics, they may see that as such a plus for you that you have that background, that real world experience that you're going to bring to the table in teaching students at the high school level for physics. And your resume in that case, Mike, might be a couple pages, 2 pages. But, you know, for as a student who hasn't already been in a career, isn't making you know, a more traditional, they're in a more traditional path with that, then they probably could still keep it down to a page. But yeah, you and I should talk because it all depends on what your goal is and whether that past experience maybe can be leveraged into what you're trying to do going forward in the world.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Very good question. Anybody have any other questions?
I have one question.
Mhm.
After my student teaching, they a long-term sub is leaving and they offered it for myself to take over. How would I write that on a resume? Would I say like a long-term sub, because I'm not just following a sub's plans, I'm making the own plans for the rest of the year?
Yeah, that's a great point. I would probably, for your position title, call yourself a long-term sub, so they understand that it's not like you were just there for a day or you're one of those people that they call here and there to come in. So yeah, I would say long-term sub, and then get, you know, listed as a position and give some robust bullets of the things that you're doing, developing content, or, you know, whatever it is that you're going to be doing in that role. I would definitely set it up that way.
Okay, thank you.
No problem, Alexa. Good question. Okay, anyone else?
I have a question about listing GPA.
Mhm.
So when you list your education, you go reverse chronological order, and then do they want to see every GPA that you had? Say I went to community college for the first 2 years, then I transferred, and then I'm at STAC. Do they want to see all the GPAs?
Yeah, so I would put the GPA, if it's same rule, 3.0 or higher
Okay,
for the community college. Did you get the associate's degree before you left there?
I did.
Okay, so you want to put that associate's degree, set it up the same way, that consistent formatting, the same way that you set it up for the STAC education. So it would be the name of the college, city, state, and underneath that you received an associate's degree in whatever it was in.
Okay.
Okay. Good question, Molly. Any other questions on anything? Okay, you guys can cut me off, jump in if you think of something after the fact. I do want to give you, this is what I was saying before, a quick Snapchat. Snapchat. I talk to my daughter too much, I guess. A quick overview of what the whole thing's going to look like when you are done with the format. I always recommend students do this. Like just what I do is I go into print preview so you can see the whole doc, because it's an easy way to make sure that the formatting is all aligned. Everything's lining up nicely. You see my bullets are all aligned properly. The dates are all aligning to the right. So just do a quick print preview to make sure visually, overall, it looks like it's formatted well. All right. So now this is blurry and I apologize, but really all I wanted to point out, actually this one I'm not even going to dwell on. I'm going to point out something on this resume. So again, it is blurry, but I think you can read it. If you have the honors and achievements, I just wanted to show you there's a lot of different things that you can put into this when you brand it honors/achievements. So if you participate in something on campus here that you're particularly proud of or off campus, you can include that in this type of section. And then this is where I was originally saying to you, Mike, with the related experience, additional experience. So in this example, this is not an education focused resume, but I think it's going to give you a good idea of what I'm trying to explain. So this student was a finance major and they did participate in 2 internships in finance and they were a bank teller. All relates to the world of finance. So they are going to showcase that experience to the employer that's looking at the resume. You want to always think about the reader of the resume and what's important for them to see, and listed it in a related experience section. Likewise, for an education major, if you worked in a camp or if you were that substitute teacher or you are currently working as an aide or maybe you even babysitting, you're working with the population that you're looking to teach with, or even just you're in some sort of teaching capacity, those might be considered related experiences to what, and when I say related, I mean related to the goal of your resume. So your resume, you're using it to get a teaching position and you're all different. Some of you are early childhood, some of you are 1 to 6, some are you for the high school, secondary. So that section may vary based on your goals. But if you had a position that ties into working with a certain population, like the camp counselor or the babysitter, even a babysitter, you might work on homework with students. So in a sense, you are teaching. And you know, if you have trouble thinking this through, like coming up with bullets, you can always reach out to me. I'm happy to help you with that. But that would be your related experience section. It's kind of something outside of your student work, your student teaching, your observation hours. It's another job or some kind of experience that you've had that you feel like you could leverage, and you want the person reading that resume to notice for sure when they do a quick skim. You can put that into the related experience section. So it's essentially everything I showed you earlier, the name of the organization, city, state, the dates you were in that role, and what your position title was, and then the bullets describing what your responsibilities were. But I would say, instead of putting bullets, like if you babysat, if let's say you're looking to do grades 1 to 6 teaching, then you may not want to focus on a bullet about changing diapers, but you might want to focus more on if you help the child with the homework, as I said, or created activities to engage the student in whatever it might be, or used creativity to design whatever. I'm not a teaching person, so I apologize that I'm coming up with some bad examples, but I think you guys get the idea. And then all the other jobs, the random jobs, can go at the bottom. If you look down, you see that additional work experience section. There, we just listed the role, so the job title, the organization name and city and state, and then the dates that that person was in those roles. Again, if I am the interviewer and I'm talking with you and you have the related experience in the additional, I may not even care to discuss the additional. What I'll probably take from that is that you were working, as we discussed already, and there's something to be said about that. If I really want to know, for in this example, what you did as a lifeguard, I'll ask you on the interview, but chances are I'm going to be more focused on what you did that relates to the position I'm looking at you for. So it's a great way, especially if you, for example, worked at a camp 3 summers ago, and since then you've worked as a lifeguard or a waitress, and you feel like, okay, in chronological order, that camp counselor is going to fall way down. They may not even see it. This is a nice way to showcase what you really want to make sure they see. Anybody have questions on that? Okay. So when you send your resume, you generally want to send a cover letter, also known as a letter of application. And this is really just letting the person who receives your resume know why this resume is sitting on their desk. They may have advertised several positions, so they need to understand what's the goal of this resume. Again, going back to that first visual I shared with you of the recruiter or the school administrator just overwhelmed with resumes and cover letters, you want to make sure that it's not a 2-3 page letter to them. 3 to 4 paragraphs should be fine. And it's very targeted. So first paragraph, you want to state the position that you are applying for. And if somebody referred you, so let's say that your mother's best friend works in Clarkstown South, and she told you, send your resume into so-and-so, they, and tell them that I recommended you or I referred you. That could carry a lot of weight. On average, 70 to 80% of job leads come through your network. So you never know how that network could really help you. So if you have somebody referring you and suggesting you apply somewhere, I would always say, would it be okay if I use your name in my cover letter? And if they're fine with it, this is a great place to put it in that first paragraph. Second paragraph is really the meat of the cover letter. That's where you're putting 2 and 2 together for that school administrator who's reading the resume and cover letter. If they say, for example, we're looking for someone who has worked with children ages 5 through 10, and you babysat for 4 years with kids that age, this might be a great place to point that out. If they're looking for somebody with certain skills, such as using smartboard technology or something like that, this is a great place, again, to let them know, because essentially you want them to be checking boxes in their mind as they see your cover letter and ultimately your resume. Some people will go so far as to they look at a job posting and they see what they're saying they'd like. So for example, that smartboard technology, maybe you use that in your student teaching, but you forgot to put that on your resume. I would even recommend go back and put that into update your resume before you send it out, because you want them to be looking at that resume and saying, oh, she's got that, she's got this. These are the things that we were told were important for this role, especially if it's not the person you'd be working for, it's just the human resources person. So that second paragraph is a great place to put the pieces together for them. And then the third paragraph or final paragraph is just simply asking for the interview. If you'd like to put another paragraph in between there, highlighting why you're really interested in the school district and maybe where you see alignment with your background and the values of that school, the mission of that school, that's a great thing to do as well. All right. Any questions on the cover letter? Okay, so just a couple of other things that some of the faculty here actually brought to my attention. They were saying, you know, with COVID, it's important to work that into your cover letter if you were involved in this remote learning or remote teaching. And if you used technologies like Zoom or Nearpod, or if you used Jamboard, those are all great things to mention. And schools, I guess, are according to the faculty, it sounds like those are things schools are looking for. So definitely work that in to your cover letter, include that in bullets on your resume. If you're putting down that you did student teaching and you incorporated this technology, you should have that in your bullets as well. Okay. So I do want to just mention, after you do an interview, if they're interested in you as a candidate, they may ask you for references. So 3 to 5 is great. I think 3 is fine. I don't think you want to give more than 5. And these are usually people who you've worked with or for. It could be a faculty member, but only if the faculty member is somebody you know really well, and ideally somebody you did well in their class. But the best person is somebody maybe who has been involved with you with your teaching. So maybe the teacher that you were in their classroom for the student teaching. Now, I guess I'll throw this out to you. Let's say you student taught in a school and you met the principal once or twice. Do you think because it's a principal that maybe that would be a good person to put down as a reference? Somebody just jump in with your thought. Anybody?
I don't know. I feel like it could go 2 ways. Normally the principal isn't, you know, really surrounding you because they have so many other responsibilities. So I feel like if they kind of know you, there's not much detail they could say if somebody asks calling, like just saying, yeah, like she was very friendly and a hard worker, like that's not enough because they might want to know the more specifics. What was she doing? How did she interact with kids? And they're not necessarily always around.
Yes, exactly. So although to put down the principal as a reference on that sheet of paper probably may look good on paper, if they put a phone call in and you've only met that principal once or twice and you never really had all that much of a relationship with them, they may not be the best person to put down. So just think about people who have seen you teach. Those would be the most ideal people who could really talk about what a great job you did and maybe incorporate some discussion on something that really impressed them that you did. So those would probably be the best references. And generally you're going to give their name, their title, the name of the school, for example, as I have it on here. Definitely want to include the phone number. Occasionally they will reach out via email, but most of them are going to put a phone call in, and they're just going to ask them basic questions about you, whatever it is that that school is looking for in this candidate. It's just nice to hear from somebody outside of you who has seen you in action. And it doesn't have to, so you could see on this list, there was a pastor on there. I'm assuming, you know, that maybe this pastor, this person was involved in something at the church. Maybe they taught CCD or, you know, and somehow they got to know this pastor well. Again, you don't want to be putting someone down just if you met them a couple times and they really can't speak to your teaching abilities and your work ethic. I always recommend that students take this, get this typed up and bring it with you to an interview, because at the end of the interview, They won't always ask you for it, but if they do say next steps, we'll need to get your references, you look well prepared if you can pull out the sheet of paper and say, I actually have my references, and hand it to them then. I will recommend that you start thinking about this as you guys are approaching graduation and start kind of compiling this list. You don't want to put someone on this list if you haven't asked their permission to be your reference. You never want someone to get this surprise call and just, you know, it's only happened to me once that somebody put me down without my permission. It is like you're a little taken back by it. They will, and I know I've done this. Some people reach out to me and I've only met them a few times and they'll ask me to be a reference, and I'll just tell them, honestly, I'm not the best person to be your reference. If they've worked for me, that's a different story. But if it's a student I met with a couple of times, although I know them, what can I really say about, in your cases, about your teaching abilities or your work ethic? So you want to make sure it's somebody who has a good experience with you. Okay, and then I guess that's about all I was going to say. Oh, the last thing I'm almost forgetting. So let's say you put that reference list together now, you might not be going for an interview till, let's say, July. Well, the person you asked to be a reference may have forgotten all about it. So if you are going on interviews, you may want to give this person a heads up in July, if that's the case, and just say, thanks again for being my reference. I just wanted to let you know I'm going on a few interviews this summer, or I just finished an interview and they asked me for my references. So you might be receiving a phone call. And further, I would share with them, it would be good to share your resume if possible, but also if there's something you know that school is looking for in a candidate and that person knows you did it. So for example, maybe you were student teacher and you created a whole new program for that class, and they are looking for someone with us with program development skills or creativity. It might be something you want to remind your reference about you doing, because they probably had other student teachers and they may not be thinking of it. So kind of help them along in that process and just say, you know, it'd be great if you could mention they're looking for somebody who has program development skills. If you could maybe mention that I designed that program for your first grade class this summer and the students really liked it, or whatever it might be. All right. And if you do, sometimes you will have an opportunity to upload a letter of recommendation. If you are going to get that, I would say maybe 2 to 3 letters is good. And you do not want to wait till the last minute. Make sure you give them ample time. You don't want to put somebody under stress. They could be going on vacation and they're not going to be around for a week. So make sure you're thinking about this in advance and just ask them for those letters of recommendation. And when you ask someone to write that, I would provide them with the resume. And again, if there's any particular type of position you're targeting, you should share that so they can kind of cater it towards that. Okay, I know we're running out of time, so I do want to just mention the Education Career Fair. I hope you guys will all be there. It's going to be on Thursday, March 24th, which is just a couple weeks away. You should bring your resume on good resume paper, which you can purchase at Office Max, Staples. It's just like a thicker paper, comes in a box usually. Print out several copies of your resumes. What you're going to do is walk around. It's in the library. You will walk around table to table to each school. You can talk with the administrator and hand out your resume. Although some of them may not have certain positions available, the reason we started doing this was because I was getting lots of calls in the summer from schools saying they needed candidates ASAP. I didn't have all the resumes. So the idea is they will take those resumes home or back to the office with them. And should something come up, they are going to be able to open the folder and sift through and possibly contact you. So great to get that resume out there, and who knows where that could lead to down the road. I did want to show you some quick visuals. This is a picture of one of our education career fairs in the past. Gives you an idea of how the students are dressing. You don't have to wear a suit, but it is impressive if you can, or just nice attire. A nice sweater, skirt, or for the guys, a nice button-down shirt, tie, nice pants. There's a lot of different options, but I thought a visual might be helpful for you guys. And as you can see, the schools all had their tables set up around the room. You'll check in when you first come in. Over to the bottom left here, we'll have a little check-in table for you. Lots of little goodies. And then these are some of the schools that will be at this event. I will be sending a link out on my Monday newsletter. Usually it goes out around 2:30 on Mondays, where you can see this yourself. But we have some local schools that I tried to bold here: South Orangetown, St. Paul's, Albertus Magnus High School. We will have the Archdiocese of New York. They have several opportunities. New York City Department of Education, the Bronx Borough will be there. We have New Jersey, Montvale Public Schools, Clarkstown. We have a lot of great schools and organizations coming. My recommendation is don't limit yourself to just one or two. Try to talk to several schools, because again, you just don't know who might have an awesome opportunity that you didn't realize about. Better to have many opportunities in your hand than be relying on one to come through. Take their business cards so that if you need to reach out to them down the road, that would be great. And I highly recommend that you guys think about sending a thank you note to the administrators that you talk with, and send your resume again afterwards, because you will stand apart from the rest. Most people will not do this. And the name of the game is make yourself stand out, because a lot of you have very similar qualifications. It says something about your professionalism and how serious you are about the opportunity. I feel like there was one more thing. Oh, you're going to have to wear a mask, just so you know, for these fairs, because they are larger. But again, bring the resumes. And research these schools ahead of time that you're really serious about. Because if you walk up to the table and say, oh, I saw you were coming, I actually got on your website, I loved this or that I saw, or your mission statement was really interesting, or, that will make a much better impression than the student who walks up and just says, oh, what positions do you have? And they definitely notice these things. So they may have a pile of resumes of people that they're taking really seriously, or really impress them, and then a pile of so you want to be in that pile of people that impress them. Last thing I'm going to tell you, we are having our job and internship fair, although I think education majors sometimes think it's not for them. There will be several organizations there that are targeting education majors that either couldn't come to the ed fair, or they are looking for both ed majors and other majors, so they chose to come to this. But these are some of the organizations that said they would like to speak with education majors. So certainly, again, the link with all the organizations coming to the fair will be going out in the newsletter. Actually, this link went out already, but it will go out again. So definitely something for you to consider. Best to expand the number of organizations that you could potentially have opportunities with than to put all your eggs in one basket. Better to say, I'm sorry, I had 2 other offers, than to have none, So with that said, again, I'm going to encourage you to dress professionally, bring your resumes to that fair as well. Do your research ahead of time. If you're interested in an organization, by all means, don't feel like you can't go up to a table if you didn't do your homework. It's just a way to make yourself stand out. And I do wanted to mention, I received a call from someone at Holy Angels just a couple of days ago. They are looking for substitute teachers actively. If you are interested, let me know and I can get you the information. I also shared it with a lot of the faculty in the School of Ed, so they may have that as well. But that's a hot opportunity that just came through. And I'll end there and throw it out to any last minute questions. I know I'm just a little over on time. I'm sorry about that, Cassie.
We still have a few minutes until our next session, so we have some time for questions. Yeah.
Awesome. Has anybody had any issues with interviews or resumes that they want to throw out there? for questions about the fairs, the upcoming fairs. Really is a good way for you to get in front of some and have exposure to some professionals that you might not otherwise. And actually, we will have alumni at both of those fairs, very eager and anxious to get more STAC students into their schools. And I mean, we have a lot of connections, which is great.
I have a question. This might be a bit of a nitpick, but when we arrive to the fair with our resumes, like, is there a specific kind of like folder or something that we should be putting resumes in? Like, does one look more professional than another?
Very good question. So generally, I would recommend a pad folio, which is kind of a padded folder. If you really want to look professional, you don't have to have a pad folio, but in general, what I'll probably do, since you brought this up, we were going to be giving out pad folios at the job and internship fair, but maybe I will bring a certain number of those to the first people to arrive. We'll get them when they check in. So you can easily put your resumes, and that's great when you go on an interview. You keep your resumes, bring extra copies, and those references that I mentioned in your pad folio. So I'm glad you brought that up, Joseph, because now I will make sure I have those to give away to you guys. We're also giving away some other little things that we thought teachers would like having. So yeah, so good to get there on time, I guess, because I don't know how many I'll be bringing, but I will try to bring a good number to get to the first people who arrive. Very good question, actually. But a folder will do, so don't feel like, without that.
I have a few words of advice if we have a minute from doing these interviews many a time. One thing that I recommend is, get to know kind of some of the lingo. So if you're an elementary person, if you're doing Fontes and Pinnell, if they do foundations, any of those jargony terms, the school district really likes to hear that you're familiar with those things. So if you're doing those in your classroom, definitely bring that up. If they ask you what's Fontes and Pinnell, even if you don't know what it is, just look it up afterwards, smile, look it up afterwards. But also try to have at least one or two kind of experiences of really innovative teaching that you've done that you can recount, because they really do like hearing specific examples. So those are kind of just two things I was thinking about.
And I would just add, we're going to at some point touch base about technology resumes, digital portfolios. So much of what Maureen talked about today, it's laying the foundation for the digital portfolios, which are a little bit different. But I mean, Maureen, you just provided such a wealth of information and really clearly delivered. Thank you so very much. I know that everybody has, I'm sure, really benefited from it. And we absolutely would love for you to kind of come to that whenever it is we can schedule that. We will let you know. But I would also add any opportunities you have to talk about the technology, the educational technology that you're using. It's just become, after having been on, doing Zoom school, it's become something, I think, that's an expectation, so anything you can do to be able to speak to that in your instruction and your assessment would be really valuable. So maybe this would be a good time for us to break. Everybody can, get a quick restroom break in, get a drink of water before we log into the next session.
Great.
Yes. Thank you so much, Maureen.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and good luck to everybody. Let me know if I can help with anything.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.